Today, we are here with Dr. Jason L. Williams. Jason is a Texas real estate investor who has done around 15 to 20 deals. He started with single family homes and now focuses on multifamily. He now structures his projects through a mix of syndications, joint ventures, and self-funded deals. Without further ado, welcome to the show, Jason.
Thank you, Eric.
Yeah, well, thank you. Definitely a pleasure to be able to make your acquaintance. We have a colleague in common, and I've been following you from afar, really been enjoying your podcast. It sounds like you're a numbers driven guy, and especially with your background. So with you being an engineer, I'm sure it just comes a lot easier for you than it does for me. I'm not the most analytical person. I'm the big picture guy, the vision guy that just go get stuff done. And so that's kind of my MO. But yeah, it's definitely been a really great experience following you from afar and learning from your podcast. I think what you're doing with the underwriting and creating content around that within your podcast, I think that's amazing. And I think that's a service that definitely needs be to be given because there's a lot of people that need some assistance with being able to underwrite and get a solid understanding of exactly what the numbers need to look like, what the numbers should look like. And so it's definitely good to meet you and looking forward to the interview. But before we get into the show too far, I'd love for you to just share a little bit more about yourself and also how you got started in real estate.
Yeah, sure. So my real estate journey, I guess, started back when I was still in high school. My parents got into real estate. And so I kind of always assumed that I would be getting into real estate eventually. And I am an engineer. I earned my PhD in chemical engineering. And so I was an R&D engineer for 15 plus years. And all that time I had real estate. I got my first house when I was in grad school, and I still have that house today. I've refinanced it multiple times, pulled equity out, and was able to buy different other investments. So, I mean, real estate has really given me the leverage that gives me the lifestyle I need. But as an engineer, or specifically an R&D engineer, I had to take the data we were gathering from the lab, translate it to something that the salespeople can use. And it was a long, tedious process that I turned into a system, creating a lot of my macros and tailoring Excel to do what I needed it to do. So I took that skill set and turned it into a system for underwriting multifamily and actually other types of commercial real estate as well. So you say you're like a big picture guy and get stuff done, and I'm the kind of guy who sees the big picture, and then I have to figure out the details to make that happen. And so that's who I am. And one thing I hate is doing the same details over and over and over again. So I like to create the systems to start automating things so that I do it once and I can move on and not have to keep recreating the wheel each time. So.
Yeah, and I think that's extremely helpful to be able to figure things out. And then once you make it work, then you can speed it up and then you can scale it. And so I love that approach. And I think that's a remarkable way to go about business because if you're just constantly reinventing the wheel or reworking things, you just basically chase your tail. And so I think you've got a great process that and mentality that will definitely move the needle forward within business. And so what exactly does R&D engineer, what's those initials for? What is that? I'm sorry.
R&D, is research and development. So I worked at a plate heat exchanger company, and a heat exchanger it's like a radiator in your car, except with a radiator, it uses the forced air from you driving by driving, and it's forcing the air through the cooling to keep your engine cool. Um, but with a plate heat exchanger, you have two different fluids, one hot, one cold, and they sort of exchange their temperatures without actually mixing, so that you come out with temperatures that you need. And this is in like pretty much every industry, from oil and gas, chemical plants. We had a lot of our units up on top of hotels in Las Vegas for their HVAC systems. So, I mean, and Google has them in their service centers to cool down their servers. So, I mean, it's uh, heat exchangers is a big industry in like oil and gas and chemical and basically industrial settings. So that's what I did. And we developed the plates, and then I had to test them as a research and developer. We tested them, and then we tweak them to make sure that they're doing the heat exchange that we need them to do. And then once we get it finalized, then we can, like I said, I convert that data into something that the salespeople can do, so they can sell it to the hotels in Vegas so that they can size them according to their HVAC needs, what their GPM or the gallons per minute flowing through it would be, and stuff like that. So there's a lot of nuances in that, and I can go into all sorts of heat exchanger details that aren't going to pertain to anything here, but so I'm not going to do that. But let's just say it's pretty intense, and if you don't know what you're doing, you can really mess things up. So size things wrong and actually potentially blow things up if they're not cooling properly. So
Yeah, that sounds about like what I would do right now. If you turn me loose in there to start working on some things, but no, that's very detailed work, and you guys, the analytical people, you thrive in those type of environments, and you also thrive in real estate. You're numbers driven. You're able to get into the weeds on the details, and really identify and spot issues and spot opportunities. And within real estate investing, that goes a long way. If you can comb through some books or find a gem that a lot of people are glossing over, then you can stumble into a really great opportunity. And so I'm sure that you've had a few of those experiences. Now, one thing I would like to ask you about, because you started off in the single family residential world, what's your perspective and what's your take on multifamily compared to single family residential? Do you think it's an even arena, or do you have one that you favor over the other?
so I got into single family real estate mainly because my parents were into that, and they're into all my parents' portfolio is residential. They did end up getting like some quads and duplexes and stuff, but they told me, I was like, I need to focus on single family. So that's what I did. And then in 2017, I met Joe Fairless at a conference where he introduced me to multifamily and specifically syndication, where I don't have to come up with $5 million to buy a property. I can pool investors' money, and then together we can buy that property. And that opened my eyes, and it was like, oh wow, look at this opportunity. And so, one, I still have all my single family residences that I always bought, or I just got. I've never gotten rid of them, but I'm also broadening my portfolio to multifamily, and then I'm also broadening it even further as I'm doing a mobile home community development right now. So um, I think money can be made in all of them. I know people who've had 100+ single family residences. I know people who have thousands of units in multifamily, and each one of them is very successful in what they do. So I'm not going to say one is more or better than the other. It's just they're different avenues, different vehicles to achieve the same goal. So
Yeah, and that's somewhat my take as well, because there's so many people that all they want to do is buy multifamily, and they completely disregard single family residential properties. And within multifamily, I could see as you scale, things can really begin to take off and generate significant cash flow for you. But just as you mentioned, you don't necessarily have to raise all the capital yourself or bring all the equity to the table. You can raise capital, but what that does is it just gives you a portion of ownership. And granted, you've got a portion of ownership when you buy a single family residential property as well, because the bank is your partner, so to speak. But you've got 100% ownership of your own. So it'll just be you in on the single family residential property, unless you're buying it with one other person or something to that effect. And you can still capitalize on 50% ownership, where when you're getting into syndication deals, when it's all said and done, you could own, 7% of ownership, have 5% equity or ownership within a syndication deal. And so it's a little bit different. The beauty of syndication is you're not bound by your own bank account, and you can scale it, and it's a team effort. And so there's so many benefits. There's so many pros and cons on either side of things. So I love the fact that you didn't necessarily bash one or the other. Hey, Jason, if we could, let's go back, and let's chat about your beginnings. What did it look like for you? I know you grew up in a family in which your parents owned real estate, and single family residential properties. What did it look like for you when you got the bug, and made up your mind that you were going to start purchasing real estate? What did that look like, and what was your first step?
So actually, my first experience was actually kind of dismal because my parents, while they didn't self-manage, they like to do self-maintenance. So they had me going in, painting units, changing electrical outlets, light switches, stuff like that, mowing the yards. And it's like, I mean, while I learned a lot, I was 17, 18 at the time. It's like, I didn't really want to do that. After a while, when I told him, my dad's like, I don't want to do this anymore, he didn't want to do it anymore either. He was just using me for basically free labor, and ended up getting the management company to do all that. So, I mean, so I learned then that management companies are good for a reason. They can get the right contractors, the handyman maintenance done, and that can actually do it better than if you do it yourself, because they have scale, and that really helps. But it's like, as I was in high school and in college, I can see my dad buying property, and I was just proud to like drive around town saying he owns that, he owns that. Back then, I was like, we own that, we own that. I didn't actually have any ownership in it, but I felt like I had part of it. But I think that's when I got the bug. And then when I got my first house in grad school, my dad helped me pick it out. We knew it was going to be a rental immediately. So after I graduated, we were renting it out. My wife, she also grew up with real estate. So right away, we were on the same page of knowing we are going to rent this house, and we're going to have lots of real estate. One of my friends likes to call us land barons instead of landlords, so that's what I kind of adopted. What the term? I'm a land baron now. So
Nice, nice. Land Baron. Yeah, that sounds pretty powerful. Okay, well, okay, and so you took down your first property in grad school. You turned it into a single family residential long-term rental. So let's kind of keep moving things forward. And so after grad school, you picked up the first rental. It was a long-term rental. Um, what did it look like once you got into your career field? You became that engineer. You got that great job. and you continue to buy properties. How were you able to do that, and how were you able to compartmentalize and separate real estate from your W-2, and make sure that both kept thriving, both received their equal attention? What did that look like?
For one thing, I never got any support at my W-2. When people found out I had a house, they're like, "Oh, you should sell it," and blah blah blah, because it was in a different town and I had a manager and I was paying them 10%. It's like, "You should sell it. Why are you paying a manager to do whatever?" But having a manager allowed me to like free that up. So I was getting the cash flow from it, but not have to worry about the day-to-day stuff. It was more like worrying about the month to month, or eventually it's like I just pop in every couple months, say, "Hey, how's it going?" I'm still getting my money coming in from the rent. So I mean, there's been no big expenses. So it's like, what's there to worry about? It just keeps coming in. And then eventually it's like once or twice a year, I'm like, "Hey, what are our rents and what are the market rents? And are we staying on top of it?" Because if you don't stay on top of it, you'll eventually learn that you're way below market rent. And then so it's going to take a long time to build back up unless you get a brand new resident. So if you have like an existing resident there and they're just keep renewing their lease, you can't just go from 18 or 800 to 1400. You have to go up incrementally to get up to that point. But if I get a new resident and that person moves out, I can go from 800 to 1400 easily. So those are the conversations I've been having with the management in that regard. And so I don't have to really worry about it. But you say I had a high paying job as an engineer. I'd like to dispute you on that, because I live in Wichita Falls, which at the time when I graduated was like the lowest cost of living in the whole country, and so the salaries reflected that. Um, so as a PhD engineer, I actually wasn't making as much money as if I lived in like Dallas or Houston, or even if I lived in California or something like that. So it took me a few years to accumulate enough money for my next down payment. And then it was like going from single family. It's like I buy a new single family and that wipe out all my savings and I have to start all over. And then I start building up, wipe out all my savings, and then start over. And then I discovered, hey, I was talking to a mortgage lender and they're like, "Hey, you have this house here. It's got equity in it. You can do a cash out refinance." I'm like, "Oh, what?" And so it's like, if I can take money out of that and buy another one, then that speeds things up quite a bit. And so we started doing that. And the coolest thing about doing that is when you leave the title company, you sign all your papers, and then they're like, "All right, now you owe us a check for $18,000." And I'm like, "No, look at it again. You owe me $18,000." And they're like, "Aha, that doesn't work like that." I was like, "No, it does." So she looked at it and says, "Oh, we do owe you $18,000." So when you walk away from title with money in your pocket, that's a good feeling that it's hard to get elsewhere. So you buy a new property and money in your pocket. So
Yeah, you're describing the BRRRR strategy: buy, renovate, rent, and then refinance, and you could just keep recycling that cash over and over again. And so you can scale that way, and pick up more properties instead of having to save up for a down payment and wait until you accumulate enough cash to be able to do that all over again. And so
yep. I discovered the BRRRR, that it was called a BRRRR method, after I'd been doing it for a few years. So like, oh, somebody already has a name for it, because that's what I was doing. So
Well, I mean, just imagine, guys back in the '80s, in the '90s, they were doing Burr and didn't know that it would eventually become the Burr strategy, the acronym. So, and so, what did you ever have a hard time? like separating the two, like your day job and building your real estate portfolio. How was you managing your family life around that?
So with my wife on board, so we were on the same page. The family life sort of just kind of blended into the real estate stuff. My W-2, I mean, I'd work during the day. Um, I'd build up vacation, and I'd use my vacation days to go walk a property or inspect the house or something, or go to title. And it's like, that's my earned time. I don't have to tell anybody what I'm doing. And like I said, everybody at my W-2 thought I was dumb for doing real estate, because they all do somebody who tried it once and lost everything, or they're doing it themselves and they're self-managing it, and they don't like it. And so it's like, everybody has an opinion. And so the hardest thing, I think, was filtering all that out and only listening to the opinion of people of who were where I wanted to be or doing what I wanted to do. So that's one big thing I tell people, is like, take advice from someone who is doing what you want to do or where you want to be. Everything else, it doesn't matter, because everybody has an opinion.
Yeah, that's very smart, and that's amazing that you were able to persevere. I know you mentioned that you didn't really mention a whole lot, like on social media when you were a W-2 employee, and there's a lot of people that face that same challenge. They don't really like to post because they want to keep things private. They don't really want their employers to find out. Sometimes individuals, they've got some clauses within their contracts, their employment agreement, that they wouldn't post anything on social media. And so I personally know of a gentleman like that. And so everyone's circumstance is going to be a little different.
And a lot of times employers have like moonlighting clauses, and it's like, what do they consider moonlighting? Am I moonlighting by going and doing my own real estate gig, or am I moonlighting by working for another company? So I mean, some of those things can get hairy, and yeah, you might win it, but is it a battle you want to fight, And so sometimes it's just not worth it. And um if you partner with somebody like my wife, she would put it all over her social media. So I don't have to, but she could do it. And if somebody asks, they say, well, that's her thing, not mine, even though we were doing it side by side. So I mean, it all the company I was with was kind of hairy in that regard. I mean, at one time they were like lawsuit happy and going after everybody, and at another time, I guess it was depending on who the CEO was at the time, one person didn't care, and then he retired, and they get someone else in, and he's just balls to the wall going after anybody who potentially went against the contract or whatever. So like, in my regard, it wasn't worth the battle. My boss knew what I was doing. My colleagues knew what I was doing. If anybody asked me, I wouldn't lie. I would tell them. But when you downplay it like that, it doesn't look like you're successful, and so they kind of just play it off like, he's just dabbling in real estate. He doesn't know what he's doing. So
Yeah. Well, and I'm with you. You definitely don't want to put your day job in jeopardy, especially if you're not to a point where your real estate or your business income or your investment income can replace your main business or your main W-2 income. And so you always got to put the side business to the side and put whatever is bringing in the most income. That's got to be your main priority. And so you don't want to take a chance on getting fired from your day job because you're trying to build a side business. That's just not mathematically correct. And so I think what you did was definitely the right way to approach that situation. And so I want to conclude this, but if you could just briefly touch on the layoff. And so you experienced a layoff from your company back in 2022, and that was the catalyst to you being able to go full time into real estate. So just kind of speak towards how that went and how your investments was able to pull you through.
Okay, so before the layoff, um, my company, I was like, they kept overpassing me for promotions and stuff like that. Yeah, I was getting raises every year, but it's like people coming in after me, I was more qualified than them. They were getting promoted over me. And so I was already of the mindset of, I'm tired of making them rich. I'm going to make me rich. And I was thinking, all right, I'm going to quit. I'm just going to quit and go my own way. And right about that same time, my company said, we're moving to Houston. And they came to me and said, yeah, we're moving to Houston. We're going to lay you off, but we want to hire you as a consultant after the layoff. So that I was trying not to smile ear to ear during that meeting with the HR director and my boss, because I was like, this is what I wanted to do. But now I get a severance package. And so it's like, yeah, it's like, yeah, I was like, holy smokes, you're like reading my mind. I was about to quit when this happened. It's like, all they asked of me was just hang out till I can move the lab from Wichita Falls, where I am, to Houston. And after that, they'll lay me off. We'll be separated, and then they'll hire me as a consultant. And so I negotiated a pretty good consultant contract where they were paying me like 20 hours of work a month, whether I did anything or not. And then um, anytime I had to go to Houston, they're like, well, we'll pay for hotels, we'll pay for this, that, and the other. Is like, no, you just pay me and I'll worry about all that other stuff. And so it really worked out for me in that regard. And it's like, yeah, I worked with them. I moved the lab. I went down there a few times, got it up and running, and then we kind of just phased away, and I was doing my thing, and they just didn't really need me anymore, which was the whole idea. And so yeah, it worked out for me in that regard. And I don't know how I could have made it work out any better for me. So
Yeah. How long were you in the workforce before you were able to successfully retire because of your investments?
I was in, so they, this all happened when I was in like 13 and a half years, and they kept me on for another 20 months. So I just got over the 15-year mark right whenever I was let go. Um, so I was like, I'm not new. I know what I'm doing. I know the industry really well, and that's why they wanted me as a consultant. So
Okay, sweet, sweet. Okay, Jason. Hey, I appreciate you just kind of hanging in there with us. I really love going deep because that's who we are. We're concentrating on building our business on the side of our day jobs or on the side of our businesses. And you know firsthand. I mean, you lived it, and so it's always refreshing to have a person that's been in those same shoes. And the beauty about real estate is I say most individuals started their real estate business on the side of another business or on the side of their W 2. And so, shocking how many people got their start within real estate that way. But hey, if we could bring things up to more current event, and so your specialist when it comes to underwriting, could you give us some details on that? We're coming into Q1 of 2026. The market it's been in there's been turbulence since 2022 with the Fed increasing the interest rates, and now things are starting to come down a bit. What are some metrics that you go after and that you pay close attention to as of to date?
what I teach my students and what I consult people on is, so long as you have accurate information, you can have like 25% interest rate, whatever. So long as you know that it's 25%, you can adjust your business plan to make it work. Right. What happens is a lot of people say, all right, well, let's assume a 5% interest rate. And then they go in and then then it ends up being like 25%. And then that's where bad things happen. And that's kind of an extreme. So while I do pay attention to interest rates and stuff, there's a lot of things out there. The business can work, even though like the numbers don't, or the economy is bad or whatever. If my wife's grandparents, they were in real estate in the 70s and early 80s. Interest rates then were like double digits and were there for like many years. They made a successful portfolio. So I mean, it could be done. You just have to know the numbers you're putting in, make sure they're accurate, and then you adjust your business plan around those numbers. If you're trying to buy a $10 million property, you have 8% interest and it doesn't work, then you start reducing your 10 million. Maybe it should be like 8.7 or 9.3 or whatever. And so that gives you an idea of what it is. And a lot of times people will say, all right, I want 10 million for my property. But really, they're just saying 10 million, even though they'll accept 9.3 or whatever. So, I mean, you never know what will happen. But like I said, know what your numbers are, make sure they're accurate, move forward, and then put your best foot forward. It's like, because I mean, Texas, I invest in Texas. Insurance is through the roof. It's starting to come down. Taxes are through the roof here. So it's like my first property, our taxes went up like 40% when we were planning for 20%. So I mean, it's things like that, and I've learned quite a bit from that first property to what I do now. But it's like once you know the numbers, you can adjust your business plan accordingly. So there's and a lot of people like don't time the market. It's all about time in the market, and it's 100% true. It's like if you time the market, you're never going to get anything. So
Yeah. So is there any like doomsday numbers that you could survive? Because you just mentioned, where property taxes going up to by 40%, your assumption was that it will go up 20%. I mean that could decimate some underwriting, and then you add some insurance mishaps along the way. Um, so is there any way to somewhat safeguard yourself? And I completely understand you're saying just make sure you're getting accurate numbers, but what do you do to protect yourself against those property tax increases that's above? And I'm just curious, are you going off of what, figuring your taxes off of what you're going to buy the property at, or was that 40% off of where they were when you picked it up, based off of the T12 from the seller?
the funny thing about Texas is it's a non-disclosure state with taxes. So when you buy a property, you don't have to disclose to the county how much you paid for it. So this is an example that I have personally seen and use a lot. It's like I buy a property for 10 million. Okay. Taxes on that, say let's go with 350,000 or 3.5 million. Okay. Because there is a huge disconnect over like the market value and what the appraised value is for taxes. So then the county goes in and says, oh, you have an $8 million loan on this property. We're going to evaluate it at $8 million. So your taxes went from 3.5 to 8 million. So that more than doubled, but it's still less than what you paid. And so what I recommend is having a property tax advisor in your corner who will go and fight for you, and you pay them a portion of what they save you. So they might get it. I was like, well, this is 3.5 year whenever you bought it from the previous owners paying for 3.5 million. You're evaluating it now at 8. So they'll go in and say, no, you need to evaluate this at maybe 5.5, maybe 6. So, I mean, yeah, there's still a huge jump, but it's still not as high. And so that's, in that regard, you have to have a property tax advisor in your corner.
Okay. So I've heard of this quite a bit in the Texas area. You guys rely on these tax attorneys or tax advisors heavily. Um, are they missing much? Because it almost seems as if that is a bit of a gamble, and and I'm not trying to question anyone's processes or anything like that, but are there any times that these professionals miss on their assumptions?
I'm sure there are, um, but a lot of times they go up and fight on your behalf, and they'll bring in court cases. They'll bring in like court cases from Houston saying, hey, look, this is what happened in Houston. You evaluated this property at this when every other property in that county, Harris County, was evaluated this way. So either you have to do every single property up to that value, or you bring this one down. So if they did everything up to that one property the same way as a precedent, they would have bankrupted that whole county because nobody would have been able to pay those taxes. So they use court cases and precedences. They go off every time I send them my T12 and my rent rolls, and so they can do their magic and say, look, this value is based off of this, and so it's not as much as you think it is, and they've saved me significant money. So
Yeah, that's amazing. Okay, Jesse, we definitely appreciate you sharing that insight and giving us some details on how to handle being prepared for different situations pertaining to property taxes. I know Texas is huge on non-disclosures, and so that makes things just a little bit more challenging to be able to understand what type of assumption to be able to make. But you can always get with a tax professional to be able to help you guys out on that.
yeah, and that's just one example. And like you said, you've listened to my podcast. We go in more in depth into like specific cases for like insurance and payroll and expenses for management and stuff like that. So I mean, there's a lot to do. So I can't get into it all here. But yeah, there's plenty of resources that like listen to my podcast. go get my free resources. I know you'll say, well, how can you get a hold of me? And I should say that then, but I just wanted to say this is.
Yeah, no. Yeah, share it now, Jason. That way we can make sure we get it in definitely.
Yeah, so my podcast is Ironclad Underwriting Podcast. I have it on YouTube and Spotify, Apple, pretty much every other podcast platform out there, where we go into deep diving into concepts for underwriting. Like you said, we've talked about taxes, insurance. We've talked about what happens if you have a bad property manager. We also go into some mindset stuff and just general investing. So
Okay. Yeah, that's amazing. And so I can 100% vouch for his podcast. It's absolutely outstanding. And as I mentioned earlier, is doing a great service, providing us as newer syndicators with great insights to be able to make sure that we drill deep down on underwriting, because a lot of times you could buy in a great market, you can have a great team, but if the numbers and your analysis isn't solid, you could be potentially buying a problem or making a huge mistake. And so you always want to make sure that the numbers are going to align, and that you're getting things right. And that's another beauty of commercial real estate, is because you're doing it with a team. And so you don't necessarily have to be the underwriter on the team. And typically I'm not the underwriter on all my teams. But I know enough to be dangerous. I know how to get from A to Z on underwriting, but I also know how important it is. And so I just stay educating, even if it's 30 minutes, 5 minutes a day, 30 minutes a day, an hour a day. I'm chipping away at it because I just want to be extremely knowledgeable about how to underwrite, how to analyze a deal, so that I can make sure that I'm just not stepping on landmines because I didn't do or get educated enough in underwriting.
Yeah, and one thing that I've been creating is yeah, my model is scary looking, but I designed it for someone like you who may not know all the ins and outs, but you can populate a rent roll in a T12 and you'll get 90% of the way there. If you use like the defaults that are already in place, you can get reasonable numbers, but also set it up for like the advanced user who can go in and tweak every single little thing if they don't like how the defaults are, so that you can really fine tune your underwriting that way. So that's my mentality when I created the system. Because like I said, when I was an R&D engineer, I had to convert the data from the lab so the salespeople can do it. And I eventually got it so that the lab tech could do that himself. So I didn't even have to be a part of that process. He might send it to me and say, does this look good? Or am I doing this right? And I can say, yeah, or you might want to try this. But that's it's like I want to create it, and maybe this would be bad for like a layman to be able to use and move forward with a reasonable approach. So yeah, that's how I've created my whole system.
Okay. Yeah, and I saw the calculator. I combed through your website, and so I'll have to download it and take a look at it myself. But yeah, Jason, great job on everything that you're doing within the underwriting and providing value for us younger syndicators. So that's absolutely amazing. Hey, we're gonna turn the page. We got a portion of the show that we like to call our Moonlight Coaching Round, and typically what we do is ask our guests a few questions. If you could hold your response between 1 to 2 minutes per question, that'd be great.
Okay, I'll do my best.
All right. Okay. So the first question that I have for you is, what do you think every new real estate investor should know before investing in real estate syndications?
Just educate yourself. You need to learn the roles and responsibilities of it, figure out which one you would be filling, and then learn about that aspect of it. Like if you say you're not going to be the underwriter, then you need to concentrate on maybe capital raising or asset management or something like that. You need to learn about it and always be learning. It's like I have a PhD and I still feel like I need to be learning something every day. So
Yeah. I was just holding that conversation with my oldest daughter, and I was just letting her know how important it is to feed, intake within your mind new information, because things are evolving, and then there's just so much that we don't know. And so the more you can learn, the more intelligent people you can um, accumulate information from, it's just going to position you in a much better place to be able to excel and achieve a high level of success. So I think that's spot on. The next question I have for you, Jason, is, knowing what you know now, what kind of advice would you give a person attempting to get where you are within their real estate journey about balancing business and life? And so it's the age old question, work life balance. What's your position on that? How do you feel about it?
so if you get your family involved in your business, then you don't really have to worry about work life balance. My wife is involved. My kids know that they're going to be doing real estate whenever they come of age. And so whenever you do that, then it's like whenever you make a trip somewhere, I take my family on a family vacation to Salt Lake City. I've the last few years. You know what's in Salt Lake City? The best ever conference. So I go to take them to the best ever conference. And so I rope them into the real estate. I rope them. We've all gone out to my mobile home community, or at least the land that's going to be a community, and they all have seen it. They all know it. We drive by our apartments. They know what we own. They actually swim at the pool sometimes in the summertime. So it's like they understand real estate. They understand mom and dad are in it, and so it makes the work life balance kind of a blurry line between it because it's all.
Yeah. Yeah, that's kind of funny because as you're speaking about that, I think about my family, and so sometimes the kids they get pretty bored with it. It to you it's a little impressive. You're like, somewhat won't know like brag. Hey, do you want to drop through our mobile home park? And it's like, nah, stay home, just watch the television.
Well, right now it's just an empty field with like some wheat growing on it because that way we get the agricultural tax benefits. So
Yeah. I love to hold a conversation with you about that. We're in a process. We're going to develop ours within the next 6 months, 6 to 12 months, and so yeah, we'll definitely have to chat offline about that. But next question I have for you is: if a person had minimal amounts of time, no money or experience, but they wanted to start and scale a business like yours, what would you recommend for them to do? And so, if a person just didn't have a whole lot of time or money, or no money, what's a good path for them to be able to get their foot in the door?
so that's a hard one because it's a whole lot easier if you have time and no money, or money and no time. You can get into it, but if you have no time and no money, you're going to have to find the time. You're like the whole thing is educating yourself. Find the time, go to networking events. My wife used to go to networking events. Sometimes she still does. We live in Wichita Falls. It's about 2 hours from Dallas, Fort Worth area. She used to go after work, drive 2 hours, go to networking events and drive back and then go back to work the next day. So, I mean, yeah, it's hard, but the relationship she's made from that helped us with our business moving forward. So, like you said, you're going to have to find the time. A lot of my stuff I did after hours, like we're playing games, watching TV with the kids. I'm sitting on the laptop, sort of paying attention to what they're doing, but still writing my spreadsheet, making my code to do what I want it to do. So,
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. And so it's just like anything else. If you want something bad enough, you're going to have to carve out some time. And so money is something that you can partner with people on. Time is something that you're going to have to look at your personal schedule, your personal life, and see what can get placed to the side or how you could carve out some time to be able to go after achieving your goals. So I think that's spot on. Last question I have for you is: what are the best reasons to invest in real estate as a passive investor?
so one, uh, and and there's actually lots of reasons for it, and you want to partner with people who have similar reasons. Some people want to partner, or some people want to invest for cash flow, where you get a steady paycheck every month, more or less. The more units you have, the easier it is. Some people want to invest for like basically maintaining equity and growing it. So you might not be cash flowing it, but at the end of the cycle or end of your whole period, you're doubling your money. So that's another good thing with real estate is you can potentially double your money in 5 years or so. One big thing is tax benefits. You get depreciation. If you're big enough, or if you're doing multifamily syndications, you can do cost segregations. They brought that back, so you get 100% of that now. So you can get significant, what is it, accelerated and bonus depreciation in year one. And then what happens when you're done with the whole property is you can defer all the taxes that you would have paid and buy another property, 1031 exchange. So, I mean, huge tax benefits with real estate. So,
Yeah. Yeah. There's so many pros that comes with real estate. And so I'm not knocking stocks and bonds, etc. But real estate, you can impact your value and the amount of capital that's able to um, be capitalized on, and also the tax savings and all the other benefits that comes with owning real estate. You can influence the income. There's just so many different opportunities, and as you mentioned, also you could double your cash within 2 to 5 years or 7 years. And so that's absolutely unheard of within the stock market industry.
yeah, and I never even mentioned leverage. I mean, when you can have the bank pay for 70% of your property right off the bat, it's a whole lot easier to double your money on that 30% rather than buying $100,000 house and doubling to 200,000 versus going from 30,000 to 60,000. So that's how you can double your money. Using leverage is a whole lot easier. So
Exactly. Okay, Jason. Well, great questions. Great answers to each one of those questions. We're going to wrap things up. But before we let you go, if you could share with the Moonlight audience a great personal development book or either a great business development book.
So probably my book that I recommend the most, and this goes back to what you just said, is it's Who Not How. And Who Not How by Benjamin Hardy and Dan Sullivan. It's like, instead of thinking of how to do something, think about who you can partner with to do that. So maybe I need somebody with money. I don't have money, but I can partner with somebody who has a lot of money. And so when I partner with them, they can help me get the loan and we can go and buy a property together. Or it's like, as an underwriter, it's like, well, hell, I don't want to talk to people. I want to stare at a spreadsheet all day. Well, I need to partner with somebody who's willing to talk to people and go and raise money. So, I mean, Who Not How is a game changer. One big thing that my wife and I and all my other business partners believe in is know what your superpower is and stay within that superpower and hire, outsource, partner all the other people that you need that your superpower is not. So
Yeah. Yeah, I love that book myself. And as I was at work today, managing things and not necessarily managing things because I got great people in place, great managers. I was just speaking with my wife and just telling her how fortunate we were to have such great managers to keep the business moving forward. And so that goes back to that who, not how thing. You just got to put the right people in the right seats, and they could continue to move the business forward. So I think that's a great book recommendation. Jason, we want to thank you for coming on to the show. You've been a wealth of knowledge, sharing all the way back to how your family owned real estate and how you were able to get your first start after as a graduate and participating within graduate school and all the way up to where you are now, multifamily, syndicator, buying commercial real estate. Let's say someone listening to this podcast decided that they wanted to reach out to you and connect. What would be the best way for them to be able to do so?
you can reach out to me via LinkedIn. You can reach out to me via my website, ironcladunderwriting.com. If you go to ironcladunderwriting.com, you can find me on LinkedIn. You can find my YouTube channel. You can find my free resources that that you can go and you can download. You can access. You can see how I do things because there's a lot of people out there who like give a dumbed down version of what they do. And I try not to do that. I don't necessarily put out everything that I do, but the stuff I give away is what I use. And so that's what I feel would be good if you want to learn how to like go step by step on how I underwrite a deal. I have my underwriting checklist there, and so you can see how I do that. Um, and then I also have a community with my wife. Again, it's accessible through my website where you can go and join like-minded individuals. She holds a meetup every Monday at 11. Um, she picked 11 on Mondays because I can do a lunch at 11. I can just say I'm taking an early lunch. That way I was always able to attend it while I was in my W-2. Now, I didn't always be on camera and I was never in the picture for social media, but I was always there. So there's a lot of things you can do as a W-2 employee during your day that you can move the needle on your real estate journey. So, but yeah, go to my website. Everything is funneled through there.
Okay, great, great. Well, once again, Jason, thanks for coming on to the show. I look forward to having you back again.
Okay, cool. Thank you.